Hello, I am Cindy Sparkman, and this presentation is to go over the experiment that I implemented with my students regarding the question of how does curriculum selection affect student retention rates. In this presentation, we're going to talk about where I started, the new state testing, my hypothesis, the comparison of curriculum, the design of tests, the analysis of results, and the conclusion. I began teaching in Green Forest Middle School in August of 2022. That's not a whole lot of time to prepare, much less for a teacher who has never been teaching before. And when I accepted my position, I was told that the curriculum was up to me. After a quick panic attack and quick research, I followed up and decided to choose the curriculum CK12 after the recommendation of my principal. Beginning around the time that the Atlas was required by the state in 2024, that was the end of my second year teaching. And at that point, I think you are becoming a little bit more critical and you are more knowledgeable of things. And I started questioning whether the curriculum was an issue with my students. So I did form the hypothesis through the different researches that I've completed, that the hypothesis would be that my students would have a higher retention rate with a more student-driven curriculum administered. So what is the Atlas exactly? The Atlas came into effect, as I stated, in 2024. It was part of the new LEARNS Act that was signed into law. And the Atlas, it replaced the ACT Aspire test. It is the summative test at the end of the year that's given through middle school up to 8th grade, and as low as, I believe, 3rd grade, to assess student success and what their needs are, and if they have learned the required knowledge that needed to be learned throughout that year. So what I have here is the rankings that was sent to us by our co-op. I don't know if you can really see that very well on the screen, but we have the English language assessment, the reading, the math, the science, and the algebra, and the breakdown of scores. If you can see there on the science, this is for the 8th grade rankings. If you could see there on the science section, Green Forest, I think, is listed at number 14 within our section, which is a little bit lower, a little bit closer to the bottom than what I prefer. And the average was 24.5, with the state average being 35 point, I do believe that's a 7, but the average overall was 35%. So I was not too pleased whenever I received these results in October of this year, but I kind of had an inkling that might have happened, that it was going to be lower than I wanted it to be. So prior to starting this year, I discussed it heavily with my then at the time principal, and the new principal was hired, about what my concerns were with the curriculum, and I would like to try a different route. And I had come across Open Psych through both the co-op, through some of the professional developments that I had attended, and also through information that was provided on the DESE website. And it looked like it appeared to be more of a student-driven curriculum, and I was interested in see how that would affect retention rates. So again, my hypothesis was that if I can provide a more engaging student-driven curriculum to my students, then the test scores for of 2024-25 will be higher, because the student retention rate is much higher. So let's break down the curriculum. As I stated before, the original curriculum that I had chosen was CK12. CK12 is more of a textbook type of curriculum. Even though it's not a physical textbook, it is online, and that was one of the reasons why I chose it, is because accessibility to the students. They couldn't say that they lost their textbook or left their textbook at home or left their textbook in the locker. They could have access to it with them at all times. But it was a more also lecture based style of teaching, which I've never really agreed with in the first place. I was a former, I say former, I do have ADHD. I struggled with lecture type instruction whenever I was in school, and that was never my intent to be the teacher that I wanted to be. So, not to say that the information's not good. They do a great job of breaking down the information in their chapters, but it's not very individualized. It's more of a blanket type. In August of 2024, we started Open Psych. Open Psych is completely different, in my opinion, than the textbook type style and the lecture type style. A lot of teachers nowadays hear the HQIM, requirements, which makes this great for this curriculum because it is HQIM material that is within all throughout this curriculum. So that's one less thing I have to worry about. And it is exactly what I wanted in the fact that it is more of a student-centered storyline approach. And when I say that, they start off with an observation or a question or what they wonder, and they build off of that with projects like the driving question board. The driving question board is something we started on the very first week of school, and it's still up on the walls. The point is to get them to start wondering, and they write down a question on a Post-it, and then they stick it to this poster board as a collective, all the classes, and we refer back with many of the different lessons to those question boards to see if we have answered those questions on the questions boards. And it really perpetuates the students' critical thinking. And they do like to go back and check, well, this is what we learned here, and this is what we've learned since. So the test design that I'm doing right now is, first of all, like I said, we were to apply the new curriculum that the students enrolled in. That is a more student-engaged curriculum. I'm going to administer tests that's provided through the Atlas portal to students, gather the results of the test through the Atlas portal, and then compare those tests now that they are taking to the where the test was from last year, the test results, and then I will share those results. These are some of the students that agreed to be a part of this presentation. So I took a picture of them taking some of their Atlas tests within my classroom. If you look to the picture on the right, that is the driving question board that is behind one of my students, for example. So the results as of now, we have taken 3 rounds of the Atlas test, because that the Atlas test is broken up, the science for 8th grade, is broken up into 3 different subsections, which is life science, physical science, and earth science. As I point out, that one of the constraints is time. For me to do an actual test, it would have to wait until the end of the year when the actual Atlas test, or the state releases the actual Atlas test, so that my students could take that, and then I would have the actual results from the official Atlas test that's given in April. But that is my constraint because the assignment is due now. So what I did was I made a little bit of an adjustment. I took 3 different tests from the Atlas portal, and I got a life science test that Atlas designed. I got a physical science test that Atlas designed, and an earth science test. And my students have taken all 3 tests at this point. They started a few weeks ago, and every other Friday they have taken their test, which that concluded actually just this Friday whenever they finished and taking the earth science test. And I took all of those results of where they are and compared them to where we ended the year last year in 8th grade. And this is what we're looking at. So we took the average of the year from, if you see here, the May of 2024, and it was at 25%, as stated before. And through September and through November, here's the ending of the test. You can see we ended at 24%, which it does show that it's a negative correlation if you see that. It is very slight. It's 1% as of right now. But I think things that we should take into consideration is the timeline of where we're at. And that is when we are here in November, we are obviously not in May of 2025. So I do believe that it's going to show that they're going to be higher. So students do appear to be retaining the information provided at a higher rate than 23, 24 students. But things we also need to consider when we're doing this test, there's a different set of students. I don't have the same set of students because I'm comparing the 8th graders from last year to the 8th graders of this year. And with two different sets of students, you're going to get two different sets of results. And the tests are not exactly the same. Even the atlas is not the exact same for every student. It is more individualized than what we had before. So that's why we're using the averages. Current students tested at the state average. Current students tested at the state average in previous years. When I'm talking about when I say that, I did not include, which maybe I should have included, these 8th graders that tested last year in the 7th grade actually did test at state level at 35%. So I do believe these students coming in may have had a slight advantage because of their retention or their state testing results were very good. Were as far as state average goes compared to my 8th graders that were 10% below. The current students have not been taught life science and earth science as of yet. As of right now, we have only went through our physical science. And so I am very enthusiastic about what it's going to be like in the future whenever we have gone through our curriculum and we have gone through life science and earth science as well. And I do believe those numbers are going to be much higher. So in conclusion, what we discussed is the curriculum, how that was part of the observation part of the scientific method, and it led to the questions of would a different type of curriculum affect the retention rate. I discussed the atlas with you and told you what that was and what the results were. I discussed the design of the test, and I analyzed the results from what we have so far compared to what the students tested last year. And so far that our students are already on par with where the students ended last year. I formed the conclusion that the retention rate does appear to be higher, and I did share those results in this presentation. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and have a great day.